I spent 8 years in a silent Zen Buddhist monastery. It was a strict center focused solely on practice. As monks, we sat and we worked and we ate. We sat, we worked, we ate. For 8 years, I lived in a hermitage with no electricity, no plumbing, no insulation, and far enough away from the main building that if I had screamed, no one would have heard me. After many years at the monastery, I found myself wondering if it was time to move back into the world. A teacher of mine at the time asked, "Do you think the world needs an enlightened Caverly running around in it doing good work?" I recall pausing, a bit stumped. I remember thinking, surely the world needs me, surely. My teacher responded to my silence, "The world doesn't care." Like good Zen teachers are wont to do, the rug was pulled out from under me. My ego was crushed. I spun out in an appropriately dramatic and completely egoic fashion. I ran away. Literally, I ran away from a Zen monastery. It was quite a production indeed. Just picture a search party comprised of silent Zen monks looking for me, and me, with no phone, no email address, no bank account, no hair, yet plenty of suffering, forging my way into the world, alone. There's more to that drama. The point for now is that it took me some time to see that I needed the enlightened Caverly. I needed to experience myself as an alternative to what felt like the madness of the conditioned world, and that it didn't matter to me if the conditioned world didn't care. I cared. It was only later that I began to have more understanding of who this I actually is. And that question, that inquiry, that process of inquiry has been my compass ever since. Who am I? A few years after I left the monastery, I was teaching a workshop about the inner critic to adults. A woman approached me afterwards, her voice so clear and direct. "My high school students need what I just learned from you today. You must come visit." And so I did. In that hot and dry Sacramento classroom, I shared about the inner critic. I spoke about the way in which we are not our thoughts. I didn't dumb it down. The teens were on fire with engagement. And that day ignited a flame in me as well. I realized that it's not only possible to teach deep contemplative practice to teens. I realized that it's needed. I experienced how thirsty teens are to learn about the most important subject of all, who they authentically are, who we authentically are, what authentically is. I look back at my own high school experience, the panic attacks, the confusion, the crisis around identity, but most importantly, the complete lack of any tools or language to identify and work with my inner experience. What was your experience like as a teen? Does that bring anybody back? How many times in high school were you invited to consider who you authentically are? And how might your life have been different if you had discovered inner resources at that age? Most of all, what would it be like if all teens had access to contemplative tools and practices? if transformative practices weren't simply reserved for the privileged. Fast forward to Portland in 2014, still sharing practice with adults while volunteering to work with teens at a local public high school after school. The principal hovered a bit over the program, and at the time I had no idea why. Until the day he pulled me aside and he explained that more of his teens needed access to the tools that he saw us offering. Until he spoke about the teen suicide that had occurred in the school shortly before my arrival, that it wasn't the first, and that the school needed to do something in the realm of true wellness, true well-being, that he had to do something. He said he wanted more teens in the after-school program, which sounded great, but I realized that it cut out all the teens who have jobs after school or who take care of mom or a younger sibling. It shut the door on the teens who play sports or are in a school play. I suggested that the class be during the school day. He offered me and my co-teacher at the time, the school gym, to do demos. I'll never forget him saying, if you get 20, 30 teens to sign up, I'll figure out how to give you a class somehow. Just give it a shot. You could have heard a pin drop in that gym. And I don't think it's just because the teens were confused, having dressed down for basketball, but instead finding themselves in a circle in the gym, sitting down or in child's pose, practicing being present, still and contemplative. For 2 days, we offered a handful of 90-minute classes in which students tasted that they were not their thoughts, where they were invited to be themselves, where they, even just for a fleeting moment, were seen and heard, where they were loved. For isn't pure attention a form of love? The principal called me a few days later. Caverly, we've created a monster. Over 300 teens have signed up for your class, and I have absolutely no idea what to do about it. After many long conversations and countless logistics, we were offered the school's unused wrestling room, which that summer we happily tore apart. Teens sketched mural ideas. We put in a cork floor. And our first classroom was born. Fast forward 3 years to today, and this class, the nation's first semester-long 4-credit mindfulness course, is now in 7 public high schools in Portland, Oregon. How does bringing transformative mindfulness education to schools support collective awakening? Let's hear from our teens.
If there was mindfulness in every single high school, I can't even imagine what that would be like. That would be like bliss. Peace and love. That's what this world needs. Like, everyone needs to be loving and peaceful and caring. Like, no matter what you look like what your skin color is, what your size is. I feel like the world would be so much better off if everyone could take this class.
It's something that just simply teaches you what you already have, which is a place of center that you can find, which is internal love that you can find.
It's just everything that the class targets and gets rid of and has helped me with. If that was just with everyone, then everyone would be happier and more excited about school and life. How much people would understand each other, and just communication would be better. There would be less fighting, less bias, less self-hate.
There's so much teenage, mental disorders, suicides, things that are really like scary and daunting numbers.
People haven't been kind to me, and this class is so important. It's monumentally important. It's my rock.
The reason why this class mattered to me a lot was how it was a way to relieve all that stress and all that weight off myself. I was diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder, which is also called ASD. Whenever I encounter a situation where it turns ugly, I was like, okay, I think I can do this. I think I can do this.
And I just feel like, considering how much love this class has given to me, you can only imagine that if everyone had that, how nice everyone would be to each other.
Just being able to talk to my peers here, have a place where people care, they do. And I had never had that environment, let alone at school.
So I just started having all this unconditional love for everything, and the people that I'm mad at, or myself. I just have all this love for everything, and it just makes me so happy.
This class is so important. It's the most consistent thing and the most wonderful thing in my high school experience.
We have to fund mindfulness education because that is the thing that really we can tell kids, this will be all right. Maybe you have a really hard time in your life, but you still are so beautiful, and we can teach that.
And so this became my passion. Thank you, Barnaby. So this became my passion. How can we support teens in recognizing their own inherent beauty? How can we teach what's intrinsic, assisting teens in remembering their essence, reconnecting with it, and learning to act on behalf of it? I came into this with the question, if we begin a course with the baseline recognition of wholeness, what manifests from there? When I had panic attacks in high school, there wasn't even a label of panic attack for my experience. Or at least if that label existed, no one around me used it. Anxiety would come on before, in preparing for tests, during tests, and after tests. I had absolutely no idea what was going on. But I had one takeaway. There must be something wrong with me. It didn't occur to me to use these experiences as opportunities to explore the nature of the conditioned mind. These experiences were proof that I was flawed. Anyone relate? Imagine a form of public education that sees this accusatory self-talk as mere conditioned belief, something to bring the mind of conscious inquiry to, not something to be assumed as truth, maintained with our attention and perpetuated through our actions. I had shared practice with adults for years before being in a high school classroom, and it's there that I began to fall in love with these young people. It felt so easy to see them, to truly see them, to know their hearts. The veil between who they authentically are and who they're conditioned to be, so very thin. I mean, let's face it, as adults, we can be kind of crusty. This is a really unique room of people. We're a very privileged and very fortunate bunch. Somewhere along the way, we have realized that something else is possible for us, that we don't need to move through the world governed by our conditioned habits and patterns, and that it's possible not to suffer. That we can recognize and know ourselves, and that from this recognition, we can love freely. I can only imagine that, like me, you see your opportunity to have come upon awakened teachings as a really precious gift, perhaps more valuable to you than anything else. I see it as our duty to share what we've been given and to ensure that others, too, have the same access that we do. Our semester-long curriculum was born out of in-the-moment engagement with the beautiful beings you saw in that video. From my work sharing meditation with adults and from my own experience of suffering, I had a sense of what I saw as some of the largest stumbling blocks along the way. And so I began to toss out practices that brought those stumbling blocks to light. As a group, we played with tools. Forms were created. For example, role plays in which students act out various aspects of the conditioned mind, playing the part of negative self-talk, taking on the role of unconditional love. How teens responded to what I'd toss out was the gauge for what worked. And let me tell you, there's no better group than teens to let you know when something doesn't work. Just curious, quick show of hands. How many people at home are raising a teenager? And how many people know a teenager? I think you'll appreciate just hearing a few words from Lindy, a mother of one of our teens.
Some of the struggles that my son went through before the class were very hindering. We weren't sure what we were going to do. He had tried medication, several antidepressants. He was desperate. He felt depressed. He felt like, in his words, the world was ending. My husband and I we didn't know what to do. We were at a point where we did not know what to do, and here I had this child that is coming to me begging for help, that he needs help. I don't know how to change this, and it was very scary. It was the point where we were having to check in with him and make sure he wasn't going to hurt himself. And then we watched him take this class. We watched him slow down. We watched him become more present and get out of his head, because that's where all the torture was going on. And he stopped. The first time I watched him stop and take a breath, I had hope. And after being in the class even 6 months, he felt empowered to get off his antidepressants. And he did. And he used the tools that he learned from the class to deal with his stressors in school, in life, with friends. It was life-changing to watch him go through that metamorphosis.
Interested to hear from her son? His name's Jared, and just in the interest of time, I can't play a video of him for you, but it is on our homepage at peaceinschools.org. Jared, it's a lovely, sweet testimony to his experience. So I knew going into this that certain tools and practices would be valuable to share with teens, tools I wish I had had as a teen. Tools like being able to recognize when I'm identified with the conditioned mind and learning to disidentify from it, learning to rest in presence. As my student Kai reflected, this class didn't save me. It gave me the tools by which I could save myself. I don't think I realized how important the environment in which these tools were offered would be. The teens showed me that the environment in the classroom was not only key, they showed me that the environment was an essential container, that container itself was a manifestation of our inherent connection, that it was a form, it was a creation born of love. We created care, confidentiality, acceptance, reverence, and empathy. At Peace in Schools, we're blessed to work with the same set of teens for over 75 hours within a semester. That's a lot of space for a lot of tools. Every tool that the class offers is born of care. Rupert Spira's phrase, "Love is the recognition of our shared being," became a type of fuel in me. I felt propelled by this question. What is possible if the forms we create are manifestations of the recognition of our shared being? How does that form then impact another and another? The student's family, their community, the world. We named our course Mindful Studies. It's got 3 sections. First, we focus on basic mindfulness practice, learning how to recognize how the attention habitually moves, and learning how to direct it. In the language of our teens, learning how to be here and now with kindness. Next, we focus on understanding the processes of the conditioned mind, learning to recognize self-talk, working with the voice of the inner critic, understanding how to access the compassionate mentor within, a form teens create so that they can receive love, offer love, and know themselves as love. We teach through offering experience first. It's only after the experience that the specific tool is named. For example, when we explore the nature of the conditioned mind, how the conditioned mind creates apparent duality, we do so through guided imagery, followed by a discussion about what was experienced. This is a model by which students can turn to their direct experience as their test of reality. Teens also learn to own their projections, to recognize them, to own them. I remember the day that I stepped out of my classroom and I overheard 2 teens under the stairwell talking. They didn't see me. The girl had that post-breakup sob. She was telling Dave, my student, about all the mean things her boyfriend had said to her when he dumped her. Dave responded, "Well, don't you think he was probably just projecting?" That's a funny thing, but it kind of warmed my heart. Just imagine if you'd known how to recognize that someone else might be projecting when you were 15. In mindful studies, teens also learn how to recognize aspects of the self, conditioned survival strategies, and conditioned coping mechanisms, all with sitting meditation as the backdrop, presence and the environment of care as the container. Teens are given tools like Aikido masters to sidestep the conditioning that we, as adults here, might still be trying to sort out. Just imagine questioning the nature of identity as it's being downloaded, rather than after years of assuming that identity is you. In the last section of the course, we explore processes of awareness. We focus on the nuances of cultivating the heart of acceptance, practices of loving kindness and gratitude, conscious, compassionate communication, relational mindfulness, and the exploration of the inherent intimacy of life, the intimacy of being. The time we spend in meditation naturally expands. While certainly not all our students struggle with addiction, self-harm, or suicidal ideation, I wanted to touch on these things today because I see them as extreme manifestations as the isolation that teens are up against. And unfortunately, they're at a record high. I want to tell you about a student named Israel. I remember when we realized that he wasn't actually on my class roster. He'd been in the course for several semesters, and due to his terrific attendance, I just assumed he enrolled again. I asked Israel about it. His eyes gazed down at the floor, and he explained that it was true. He wasn't actually in the class. He wasn't supposed to be there. According to Israel, I technically have economics 6th period. We made our way to the counselor's office. While that dinosaur desktop computer pulled up Israel's grades, the counselor offered a lecture about the importance of not skipping class. To no one's surprise, it was revealed that Israel was failing economics. The counselor, confused, asked, "Israel, you have taken mindful studies several times before. Why on earth are you crashing this class now?" The room grew really still. Israel's eyes met the counselor's. "This class is the reason that I'm sober. This class is the reason I come to school. This class is the reason I'm here at all." No one in the room wondered what "here at all" implied. Just the gravity of what he said and left unsaid was profound. I want to introduce you to Notoria. Our funding comes from, our nonprofit funding comes from foundations, individual donors, as well as directly from the Portland Public Schools District. At one point, due to school budget cuts, the district funding was in question. Students, teachers, counselors, administrators, parents came out of the woodwork to make pleas to the school board. Here's a short clip from one of those board meetings. These are the Portland Public School Board members. And this is my student, Notoria. I knew she felt called to come and speak, but I had no idea what she would say.
Welcome.
Okay. My name is Notoria Arnold, and mindful studies provided by Peace in Schools, I would say, saved my life. I struggle really bad with major depressive disorder and general anxiety disorder. And my family is very close-minded to things like that, and they think it's something you just push aside and you get through. Well, I went from being a straight-A student to a not-passing student. And from there, I went from walking through the halls normally to not going to class, to being very depressed and suicidal. And I saw a therapist, and he suggested the Peace in Schools program at our school called Mindful Studies. And going in there, it was the first time I walked into a classroom and I didn't feel alone. First time I felt like I had some serious help, in that I wasn't stuck in a world where nobody noticed that I was sad or depressed and there was no way I could help myself. So without mindful studies, I don't know that I'd be standing here talking to you guys today. So thank you for letting me share why Peace in Schools program Mindful Studies is so important to me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
In the early days of the program, I thought about how expansion would allow us to bring more of these transformative tools to more teens. And I soon realized that what was being created was bigger than that. I realized that those who were facilitating this curriculum were being transformed, that their lives were being deeply altered. Now that we're in 7 schools with 8 teachers offering this curriculum, it's clear that the success of our program hinges on the depth of practice of each facilitator. The contemplative tools offered aren't crash course material. They're given life through embodiment. I could have never predicted how impactful it would be for each teacher's first and foremost job to be the embodiments of presence and unconditional love. One of our teachers started as a volunteer with only one class due to his full-time job in software sales. A year later, he was offered the opportunity to be president of the multi-million-dollar company. He turned it down. In January, he'll be joining Peace in Schools full-time. Offering this work to the world has become more important to him than anything else. Just imagine if every person who helps raise our youth was given the training to be first and foremost the embodiment of presence and unconditional love. From the teachers to the administrators to the custodians and the food servers and the coaches and the parents, how would our society be transformed? This is Kavi. They prefer the pronouns they, them. I adore them. You saw them minutes ago in the video. I heard them introduce themselves once as being a triple minority. They are Asian Pacific Islander, transgender, and they are diagnosed on the autism spectrum. A few days ago, I was brushing my teeth, and I received a text from Kavi. They wanted me to see the screenshot of their meditation app. They were proud of their ability to keep their practice alive, even though they've now graduated from our course, and they've graduated from high school. It brought me to tears. Probably not a shocker. Just imagine witnessing teens move from thoughts of isolation to thoughts of how to stay engaged with a practice of presence. Imagine seeing teens move from thoughts that maintain the illusion of separation to thoughts of how to support themselves and each other in recognizing their inherent wholeness. Inquiry into the nature of who they are. And thoughts of how to be more engaged with life rather than thoughts of how to end life. This transformation is nothing shy of love in motion, love embodied, love in form. And this love is the foundation of an awakened world. It is through our love and our understanding that the light of an awakened world expands. It is through our hearts that awareness shines. So, where do we go from here? That, my friends, is up to us. As I leave the stage today, I offer each of you a moment of unconditional, loving reassurance. Our teens practice with reassurances as a form of self-compassion, as a way of accessing their inherent wholeness, as reminders of their shining and brilliant being, of their essence. Underneath each of your seats is a reassurance written by one of our students. I offer the light of their love to you now. Please reach under your seats. Open your envelope. Read your reassurance. If you have empty seats next to you, this is a time when it's fine to steal. For I invite you later today, should you wish, to offer your reassurance or one next to you to someone else in the recognition of our shared being. May our collective love, our collective understanding benefit all. Thank you so much for having me today. Thank you so much for your care. Your care matters. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.